Hello there. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I don't know. Whenever you're watching this, currently I'm recording this in the evening, so it would make sense. But you know, people can come back and watch this whenever or what. I'm in Warplanes, one of my favorite, if not my favorite, flight-based combat shooters. I guess you could call it. Because I figured I haven't done a video on this yet, and I have no idea what to do, so I figured I may as well record a video of this to upload to my channel. Hopefully you should be able to hear me correctly. Pretty sure you should be able to. But these were my planes. I have some special ones like this one and this one, although it doesn't have its special camo. The Do 17Z7 Dornier. The Arado AR-97, one of the last biplanes ever to be introduced into service, I believe. Well, that's annoying. It doesn't give you the backstory on the aircraft details anymore, which I really do kind of miss, because that was actually a really cool feature. Do 17Z, this is a German bomber. This thing flies at like 2,000 meters. Has no guns in the front, but it can drop oodles amounts of bombs on things, and it has a powerful ray gunner if things go sideways, or if people try to come up to you. There's also my Heinkel 100D1, which is one of the fastest piston engine planes in the game, actually. I can get up to, in best case scenario, 700 kilometers per hour, as it was, or was it 700 miles per hour? Something like that. Yeah, it was 700 kilometers per hour. There's also the BF-110E, which is just a standard Tier 5 heavy fighter. The I-153 DM4, which is a Bodykarpov design with two, I think it was cryojet engines on the bottom there. Don't actually increase the speed at all, it's more like a cosmetic thing. If they actually did something, then I guarantee that this would be ranked much higher. As for 762x54R machine guns. Then there's the I-207, which is I believe, fourth, or possibly a wargaming plane, so it's a stubby little thing. I-16 Type 29 from a long time ago. This is a relatively nice looking plane. There's a BSH, which is just a standard attack aircraft. Nothing special about this one. There's I-220, my Tier 7 Soviet fighter, F-3F. This thing is probably one of the best Tier 3 American fighters in the game. Thoroughbred workhorse, this thing. P-36C is a pretty standard 1940s aircraft for the American Army. The F-4F Wildcat, which is, this thing is actually what went up against the Mitsubishi Zero fighters. There's a nice video on military aviation history about these things versus the Zeros and what the advantages and disadvantages were. This thing in this game is a very special plane for me, because this thing absolutely destroys people, or at least I remember it. When I first got it, this thing demolished bombers in, like, well, heavy attack aircraft in, like, not heavy attack, heavy fighters in this game. They demolished heavy fighters within seconds. Primarily because that is a 37mm nose cannon, and then you have two 50s, and then four 30-06 M1919s, which is insane. This thing can still demolish in the newer version of Warplanes. Now there's also the Japanese aircraft that I have, the Nakajima Key 8 and the Kawasaki Key 5. There's also the Key 33 by Mitsubishi. which is more akin to a 0. Then there's the Key 18. I believe that the Key 8 is like one of the only fighters, if not the only fighter, that has a rear gunner on it. And it's just sensitivity on that, which is interesting. That looks like a Japanese style of Vickers machine gun or something similar. Then there's of course my A6M5, which is a tier 6 fighter. This is the Mitsubishi A6 standard model, nothing too special. My Miles M20, which is supposed to be a cheaper, more easily made version of the Spitfire. I mean, personally, I don't mind the look really, except for the tail is not at the very back, and that front end is, holy hell, that's a nose to be admired. But moving on. Standard Bristol Bowfighter, nothing special about this one. Vickers K on the back. You know, cannons and bombs, pretty much what you would expect to find on the Bowfighter. This is a very special Spitfire because this is the Spitfire 5B IM. Now, the IM isn't actually a designation on the plane. The actual plane is just your standard Spitfire 5B. The IM is due to the Iron Maiden style livery that this thing has. Aside from that, it's just got your standard 403 Browning 1919s, 220mm Spanner cannons, and a Merlin 4.5 engine, which can top out at 1,515 horsepower, which is not bad for a Spitfire. Compared to this, though, which is a Spitfire 14, the actual frame on here is a Spitfire 12 with a later Griffin 6.1 engine. I could afford the Spitfire 14 airframe and the Griffin 6.5 and the Griffin 8.5, but I don't want to do that right now because the next point up from this, the armament on this thing being 4 20mm Hispano cannons Mark 5W. The next one up from this is an Attacker, which is, from here, the first British carrier-based jet fighter. First launched in July of 1946, total of 185 aircraft were built. That's a tier 9. It would be the first jet aircraft I would own, and I am well on my way, actually, to researching this thing, so I don't want to give up on that. I can hold off on the upgrades because I am going to keep the Spitfire 14. I have a slot reserved for the Attacker when I research it. And then there's just this one lonely French plane, which is the Bellibriot Spad S510, with, you know, some custom paint that I've applied from the paint shop and all that stuff when I had gold to spare. I think I've rambled for enough now. Let's actually get into a flight. First off, I'm going to go on my Spitfire 14. I'm going to go on my Spitfires first, and then I'm going to go in my A6M5 and then my I220 and all that. Because I kind of chose this game so I can ramble about planes for 20 minutes or so, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour, I don't know. I tend to like recording longer content, although people tend not to watch through it all. So we'll see. Maybe we'll do a battle with my fighters, or a select few of them, and then we'll call it a day. Who knows? For now, though. Oh, how fitting! The Albion map, just off the coast of Kent, which is actually where I was born. Also quite fitting. British coast, early evening. Now, for those of you who don't know, Albion is... Oh, Bomber Escort. See victory, prevent bomber groups. This is a new one on me. Prevent bomber groups from reaching their target. Our high altitude defenses are especially effective against enemy bomber groups. Losing the forward stronghold sector moves the enemy respawn point close to the front line. The battlefield layout constantly changes throughout the battle. Be prepared to react quickly. Destroying all enemy aircraft is another key to achieving victory. Okay. We have some big intakes on the bottom of my wing here. Also a big chunky engine with a very long nose. Okay. Let's see. So they've got multi-role, I want to attack aircraft. There's a whole load of bombers. And you gain some altitude. Start picking people off. He's a specialist. He's a good pilot. And I am being knackered by ray gunners, it would seem. Oh, and he's in a jet fight, so that's great. Oh, the XF5U. Yeah, that thing is one ugly aircraft. Honestly, don't understand what the Americans were thinking when it came to designing that thing. My God, it is awful. Let's see. Alright, that is the closest bomber group, so that's the one that is the most paramount to destroy. We'll pick off the ones at the back. And we'll progressively move through, and then sweep that round from the pass. Just need to make sure there's no one on my tail. One thing with heavy fighters, they're terrible at maneuverability. However, they pack a hell of a punch. That's a problem. He is going to absolutely destroy me if I let him get a shot at me. Luckily though, he's being chased. There we go. Okay, that needs sorting with right now. No, he's being dealt with. Okay, so I don't know how many bombers there are. Oh, there's only 2. Okay, they can deal with those. I'll go take this group out. Because there is still 10 bombers in that group, and we've not got long until that group reach their target. So we will go and see what we can do. The one thing about the Spitfires is that they turn quite slowly, and that's the problem with Spitfire most of the time, is that it's not the most maneuverable fighter. Especially in this case where my aircraft is heavily damaged. Both my wings are knackered, and this guy's plane is completely fine. I'm going to see if I can shake him off, but I don't think I'm actually going to be able to do anything. There we go. Okay, got him.
You've done what you could. Go back.
Well, that was fairly quick. Jesus. Okay. We'll come back to him in a minute. We'll come back to the Spitfire 14. I'm tempted to skip the 5B because it's basically, it turns the exact same, just has a different armament. Oh, I have a supply crate. Let's have a look and see what's going to be in it. That was a bad game. That was honestly terrible. Let's see. What is in here? We got free XP 20,000. Okay then. I am definitely using it for this. I am not using it for anything else. Yeah, now I only need 104. That's much better. Jesus. Okay. Let's go in my A6M5. I haven't actually used this thing yet. I can... Well, was this using free experience? This is using free experience, isn't it? Yeah, it is. No. Right, let's go in the A6M5. For a battle, and then we will go in the I-220, and then some other fighters. Maybe a bomber. I don't know. I'm not sure. I do have attack aircraft and heavy fighters, although that's not necessarily how I play. I much prefer the fighters. It's just how I like them. Most of my favourite planes are fighters anyway, so, you know. Hulk Hurricane, Spitfire, BF-109, the Zero here, the F4F. It's a good plane, but my favourite is probably the F4U, the Corsair. There's also
You are approaching the area of combat operations.
the
Be ready.
the MiGs, the light MiGs, the MiG-9 and 15, like towards the 50s. That's what this game primarily focuses on. It's planes no later than the early 50s. Sort of like the golden age of technological advancement when it came to planes.
Let's go.
Now, you see a complete difference with the A6M5 in terms of turn speed. It turns a hell of a lot quicker. It's because the Japanese pilots tend to like their planes more nimble. Not all of them were used for suicide bombing. I'm just going to say that now. There's a common misconception about that. They didn't necessarily banzai charge all the time or do kamikazes. It was only a last-ditch effort if they felt like they couldn't do anything else. If they felt like that they could not do anything to stop the enemy, they would then, in turn, kamikaze or banzai charge as a last hope to, you know, secure a kill or to stop the enemy dead in their tracks or whatever. I'm actually not sure about the armament on the A6M5. I don't know if I've got dual machine guns and cannons. It seems that way, but I'm not too sure. Frame rate seems to chug in the more involving sectors when it comes to this game. Okay, I'm getting hammered by those rear gunners. Yeah, I do actually think I have dual machine guns and cannons. It's also a popular way that the Japanese liked to configure their planes. They tended to have machine guns and cannons, if not just entirely machine guns, with certain planes. I do not want to get absolutely murdered. That tornado is probably going to tear me to shreds. Ah, my pilot's injured. That's great. For whatever reason, I'm not entirely sure why, this game just doesn't run all that well on my computer. I'm well within the system requirements, it doesn't run. Well, that was nice. This thing definitely needs some upgrades. My god, it's a marshmallow shooter. It doesn't do any damage, though. I need to play with this plane more. I've not actually played with it. That's all. That is a beefy nose cannon. Is that muzzle device on the end of that barrel? Jesus. I have a feeling that heavy fighters will probably be better at dealing with these bombers than just one fighter. Wave off. Getting too close. Okay, there are people behind us. There's that King Ma 1 guy. I'm gonna go get him. See if I can. And now he's waving off. This guy's not though. Never mind, he's dead. See, that's another thing. Tactics is key in this game. You have to know when to retreat and know when to attack, especially with fighters. I don't necessarily have that sort of skill yet. However, I am very well, that's steered me on horn, of course, but I'm pretty good with fighters in this game. Just it comes to using them effectively that I'm not so good at. I can do well in a dogfight, not necessarily tactics well. That's where War Thunder triumphs over this game in my opinion. You can outmaneuver people a lot easier in War Thunder. However, I find it's less fun of an experience because you can die within seconds in War Thunder, whereas in this, most of the planes are equally balanced, so there's a nice blend of realism and fun at the same time. The planes are accurate, the armaments are accurate, the sounds are accurate to a certain degree. But it's not frustratingly so, which I find is the very big problem with War Thunder, is that it's fun, but if you die every 3 seconds and you waste all your planes in like a minute, then it's not fun. This, you have respawns until a certain point, and then it becomes a battle of survival, which was a really good move on their part, I think. Wargaming did a very good decision when it came to this game. One thing that does kind of suck though is that this game doesn't really get as much attention as I believe it deserves. World of Tanks gets like millions of people, whereas this only gets a couple thousand. It's the same quality, and you know, arguably it's easier to play. And oh my god, I just got absolutely demolished. It's King Ma again with his BB-10. Oh, would you look at that? He's top. Never would have guessed. What one's closest? Are they all moving at the same speed? I'm gonna go for the one on the left. I seriously need this. This needs upgrading. It's honestly hideous. It doesn't do enough damage for a tier 7 fighter. Not tier 7, tier 6. I mean, granted, I'm used to using my Spitfire in 14, which just completely demolishes people with its just 2 cannons. Granted, that's not necessarily good for sustained fire. I prefer machine guns over cannons, but you know, cannons do a hell of a lot of damage. So, I guess if oh Jesus, I'm gonna have to wave off. My gold. Taking pot shots. There. There's a fighter closing in. He's probably roast my hind. Yep. Oh, would you look at that? It's King Ma again. 12,000 points. See, I know I do that to people, but it's really... I kind of get the people's frustration. Like, even when I do it to people, I kind of understand, like, if they're annoyed. Because it's not fun being killed by the same guy over and over and over and over and over again. That's also another problem with War Thunder. Like I said, it's not fun if you just get killed constantly. Unfortunately, that problem isn't entirely fixed in this game. Jesus Christ, I'm dipping below 30 FPS, what the hell? Although they did kind of fix it by adding in the respawn mechanic, but that's about all, to be fair. Can my team not defend a point? Christ. Oh no. No.
You've done what you could. Go back to base.
Oh, damn it. I need to upgrade my Zero. This thing is not the greatest. I need to do something about that. Right. On to the next plane. We will go in my I-220 next, which was actually my first Tier 7 aircraft in this game. It was my first aircraft above Tier 6. I have played Water Tanks, but Water Tanks to me just it doesn't sing to me really. I mean, it's a fun game kind of, but like the further up you go, the further up the tree you go, the worse fun it gets. The more like serious people become, the more people rage easily, and the more people get really toxic and hostile and racist, and it's just not a good time. The game's done fun from like Tier 1 to 4. 5, it's a pleasurable experience. 6 is where it really starts to get annoying for me. Whereas with this, it's basically the same throughout the whole thing, because you're just flying planes. There's no difference in the tanks. They're not overly sluggish. You can't be killed from the middle of nowhere. There's no cover that you can just sneak around and poke your head through, because it's all in the air. The cover is your mountains and your clouds, and even through the clouds you can still be seen. Which makes it easier to acquire targets, which also means that I can concentrate more on movement rather than worrying that there's a guy around the corner. It's also a simpler game to play as well, which also, like, with that in mind, I honestly don't understand why this game never gets over 2,000 people online daily. Like, I mean, like I said, Water Tanks gets like 6 million people, like, total, and it's usually like 300,000 people online every day. This game doesn't even hit 5,000. Which really does suck, because to be honest, this game is equally as good, if not better, because this actually got the new engine first. This got the new Wargaming engine at least 6 months before World of Tanks. It had the new combat system well before World of Tanks. It had the new textures well before World of Tanks. So in that, like, time frame, it was in essence better than the game that was more popular. I mean, don't mind me, I like my tanks, but I like my planes better. Which is kind of why I took to this game rather than tanks, because to me planes are just more interesting. I don't really completely destroyed all that IL-10's gunner. I'm gonna get into this next pass, I'm hoping. I got him. There is a whole bunch of attack aircraft that need to be dealt with here. One problem I find with Soviet fighters, though, is that they catch fire way too easily. They're too flammable. It's like flying a paper aircraft. See, like that. It didn't catch fire, but it got damaged severely quickly. It's kind of why Soviet aircraft really didn't get any better until the 1950s with the MiG and the Yak, the little Yaks. Everything else is basically just paper. Jesus Christ. Oh yeah. There's people trying to kill me. What the hell is that? That's an A7M. Ah, I just got killed by a guy called Hugbert. Oh, it was the ME. That was nice. ME 329. That reminds me of what was it? It was the German stealth aircraft. Kind of like the, what was it, the 117 Nighthawk, the American one. It was a tailless stealth aircraft that didn't fly very well at all. I think it was a Horton something prototype. It's a really cool plane, but it never actually flew. Or it did fly, it just didn't fly very well. Which is understandable, because, I mean, it had no tail. And it was a bomber from, like, 1942. The way they designed the plane, it couldn't actually fly properly. Speaking of planes that couldn't fly properly, that's basically all of Blackburn's planes. I mean, there's a skewer in the British tree, which in this game it isn't all that bad, but it's not all that great either, because it's not very fast like the real skewer, and its armament isn't spectacular like the real skewer. It wasn't really the best plane company. It was mainly Hawker and Supermarine that made the best planes, unless until BAE took over and basically snatched up every single aviation and military contracting company in the entire country. And they even bought out the Enfield Armory and made it into a museum. And even places like Vazackley and Liverpool and BSA. So all done by BAE now, including aircraft and guns. Which, I mean, is better in a efficiency standpoint, but in terms of variation, it's pretty boring. Like, everyone's making, I don't know, Harriers and Panavias and everything else, rather than, you know, making their own planes. I mean, most of the planes we use are either European Union designs, mainly Germany, or the Europeans use our planes, and same with the Americans actually. And the reverse is true for helicopters. The Americans design helicopters, we use them. One prime example would be the AH-6, which is the Little Bird for my American viewers, because I know I've got some views from America on a fair few occasions. It's mainly because helicopters are a dangerous aircraft, really. One thing goes wrong and the whole thing goes boom. Whereas with planes, they're at least somewhat salvageable. You can at least, like, either land the plane or escape from it in time. But when it comes to helicopters, basically the minute your aircraft starts spinning, you're dead. And if you're not dead, then you're stranded. The only advantage that, the only advantage that I can see that helicopters have that planes don't is that planes can't hover in a conventional sense. Or at least when helicopters were introduced, planes couldn't hover. I believe one of the first VTOL aircraft that was actually moderately successful was the Hawker Harrier. Which even then would struggle to load like a half payload and still be able to take off vertically. The early VTOL aircraft weren't necessarily all that successful, Although as time went on, the Harrier obviously got better, and they perfected the design. I believe they were used up until like 1995, maybe 1994, something like that, maybe even later. I know they were first introduced in 1985. The Americans actually used them as well, or used. There's quite a few British and German planes that are actually in service with the United States Air Force, which is quite surprising actually, considering they have a hell of a lot more factories, designers, and facilities than we do. I guess it's all part of NATO and all of that jazz. One plane that the Americans did design, which is actually pretty cool, was the F-22 Raptor, which was, actually I think it still is, the most mass-produced aircraft that has never seen combat. There is so many of them, and not one of them has seen combat, or at least from my knowledge from years ago. That might have changed, that might not have changed. I'm not so sure. Man, my frame rate is chugging. The Japanese were actually interested in them. However, the Americans basically said no, but we'll help you build a similar one. The Japanese actually ended up having a better plane than the one they tried to buy. Oh, I see what you're trying to do. Wow. Speaking of the Japanese, when it comes to aircraft, and even the military, their military is a self-defense force, yet they have the most technologically advanced forces and air capability on the planet. The US can't match up to the amount of technology that they have in their aircraft and military service, which is interesting. You would think that the world's only surviving global superpower would actually have the most technologically advanced army, but no, it seems not. Quite a lot of superpowers have come and gone, speaking of. The Soviet Union, where this plane came from, being one of them. British Empire, French Empire, well, French Republic. There's a whole bunch of real interesting history in the world, and I guess planes kind of show some of that. I often say, like, when it comes to guns as well, it's not necessarily that they are machines built to kill. It's where they've been doing that, and who they were used by. Like, for example, if you buy a shiny new, I don't know, M1A, whatever they call them, or an AR-15 or whatever, off of the factory line, that's not cool, that's not, you know, there's no story behind that. It's just there's a metal carbon machine designed for hunting and target shooting, and in some cases, killing children. There's no fun in that. Bolt actions, though, they've seen hundreds of years of use. Well, not hundreds, but like at this point, actually, almost. I've seen at least 100 years of combat, and in those 100 years, they would have been upgraded, updated, been to different places, changed, surplus, and bought by people, and then fitted and sporterized, and all of that. And it's about who. It's the same with planes as well. In some cases, like, I mean, you know, the British and the Americans got hold of some German aircraft and started doing experiments with them, and some of them still probably exist. It's about where they saw combat, who used them, if they personalised them in any way, when as well, and that sort of stuff. It's a relic of the old world that tells a story without actually saying any words. For example, on Forgotten Weapons, there was a Berthier, a French rifle, which had the Free French Cross of Lorraine stamped in brass in the stock, and that was actually, it had the Vercors V underneath, which signalised that this was one of the Vercors rifles, and Vercors was a very, very interesting story. There's actually a book on it. However, I can't remember the name of the book. And same planes. There's a Spitfire in, I think it's Mansdell. I can't remember the name of the place. It's in Thanet somewhere. Which was Spitfire 16 by the end of the war. It had seen things like from D-Day and all the way through 45, and even all the way to the end of the war, into the early 50s even. And didn't suffer a scratch. It was, no, I mean, that's probably hyperbole, but it was perfectly fine. It was like retrofitted, repainted, got all its original markings, and now it sits in a museum and people can Google it like I did when I went there. You know, it's a pretty interesting thing, especially with German planes. German planes, you don't really see many of them anymore because most of them were destroyed, captured, and then destroyed after capturing. For example, a Bf-109E 3 through 4, only about 100 of those models that are left, and one of them just so happened to be at Wartime Weekend. I think it was this year, earlier this year, which was captured by the end of the war and didn't end up being destroyed, and someone, well, it was damaged, it wasn't repaired, so someone got hold of it, and well, somewhere down the line someone got hold of it and restored it, and then it showed up at Lytham for a day or two, which is really cool. And in the War and Peace Revival in Thanet, I believe it was Thanet, if not it was just Kent in general, in that part of the country, there was a two-seater Spitfire, a Spitfire that was commissioned and surplused and then converted to two-seater, so you can actually get in it and fly around the convention. It would fly overhead, and it was really cool. They had a whole bunch of parts as well. They had Bf-109 propellers, and they had King Tiger tank shells, and Hawker Hurricane parts, like engines and stuff, and even like badges and memorabilia and torn Japanese markings and flags and burnt rifles, and there was like 2 tents worth of some really interesting firearms, actually, stuff that I didn't think you could actually buy in this country. There was a whole bunch of surplus World War II stuff, and oh, there we go, we win. There's a whole bunch of surplus military and reproduction stuff, and all that, and it was actually relatively interesting, because like I said, I didn't think you could actually own that sort of stuff in the UK. But that was a learning experience. I was only actually interested in the not just the weapons when I went to War and Peace. There was also the badges and the news articles. Like, I'm pretty sure there was a Japanese news article on Manchuria by the picture. I couldn't obviously read Japanese, so I didn't know what it said. But you know, it seemed relatively interesting. Well, let's go in the 5B. Let's see how that goes. But yeah, there was like a whole bunch of British and American stuff. I think after the 5B I'll end the video. I think I'm just waffling at this point. But war conventions are really quite the most interesting thing to go to, especially with like planes and stuff. Planes, I mean, some of the stuff that saw combat didn't even first like design. Well, they weren't even first designed as combat planes. For example, the Heinkel 100D1 was a land speed record, not land speed record, speed record breaker for planes. It was never really designed for combat initially because it only has one machine gun on the nose, which is kind of sad. Which is why I don't use it, because it's a fast plane. It's very quickly manoeuvrable, but it's very vulnerable, and it only has one machine gun. So it doesn't do a lot of damage. It's very easily killed. And its only advantage is that it can turn. And that it's very quick. That's about it. But it's still really cool because it's a plane that you wouldn't find anywhere else, really. There's also a hell lot of German prototype jet engine fighters, which are really quite interesting looking, actually, if I'm to be honest. Which is nothing that intrigues me about militaria, just stuff in general, like relating to warfare and machines and stuff. Seeing the prototypes of things, seeing, you know, how did this person do this? Like, how did this person make this thing that everyone used? Like, what did they do? How did they come up with the idea? And even, like, where did guns come from? Where did the idea for firearms originate from? And I was in the Royal Armouries in Leeds, and the Royal Armouries Museum in Leeds, and there was some relatively interesting and quite frankly beautiful looking Japanese musket type firearms. They were all like floral decorated, and they had some really interesting shapes to them. It seems like early firearms were meant for decoration and occasional hunting, rather than something you would keep in your home to keep you safe from other people, which is kind of what guns have turned into if you're not in the military. Which, to be honest, I don't agree with. Personally, in my opinion, I don't think someone should be able to get a hold of a gun that easily. Especially in America. It's scary, the amount of shootings that have happened in the last 50 years. Never mind the last month. I just wish that, you know, kids wouldn't have to walk to school scared that their school's going to be shot up, or whatever. I believe in, you know, firearms and just the stuff in general. Like, I mean, you can buy a tank in America. You can legally own a tank. I don't see the point in it. I mean, it's cool, but why would you, is the question I would ask. Why would you want to? Why would you do it full stop? Because it's not a thing you need. It's the same with actually a lot of stuff. Not just like guns and things, just stuff in general. When people want something, it's like something you need, so why would you want it? You would have to have a reason. Which holds true in this country when it comes to firearms, because you're only really allowed a firearm if you have a reason, like hunting, or if you're a farmer, or whatever. If you live somewhere where a firearm is a necessity to keep your farm animals safe, or if you do hunting, or whatever. Just it doesn't feel right knowing that people can so easily get hold of a gun. All you need to do is fill in a form, get a background check, and then there you go. Providing you have enough money, you can literally go to the shop and buy a gun. Which may be a little bit over-exaggerated, but it's just, I think things like just weapons in general should only be used for war or displayed to look at, or owned to study, or whatever. Not necessarily something that is required to keep you safe. Because if you need a gun to keep yourself safe, then it's not safe. Your country is not safe if you need a gun to keep yourself safe. Your country is not free of crime. Your country is not free of radicalists or whatever. And it's the same in Britain with knives. You can't have guns. We still have knife crime. I honestly still don't understand how I went from talking about planes to knife crime. But the point still stands. It's like weapons are made for war. And if they're not used for fighting, they're not weapons. This kind of defeats the whole point of it being a weapon in the first place. So I don't understand people's obsession with owning them. Like I've said on multiple occasions, I would have an old rifle, an old Enfield, and I would have it in a glass case. I'd have it in a glass case, I'd have it deactivated, with the firing pin removed and all that, and I'd have it in a glass case, in a display, with the bolt handle up, so that you could see where it was made, when it was made, who it was issued to, when, and what model it was, because that's really interesting to me. Knowing that someone somewhere before you had put their lives in the hands of this machine, and may or may not have survived, but their rifle did. Which brings me on to a video that I saw quite a while ago of a old US Marine from World War II who used the Garand rifle, and his family actually dug through the old Springfield Armory records and found the rifle he used had been surplused, and bought it off the guy who owned the rifle and gave it to him. It was his rifle. It was the one he used. It had been to Korea, it had been to Vietnam. It had been refitted, surplused, and sold on the civilian market, and then it was in the hands of some guy, and then his family got hold of the rifle and gave it to him for, I think it was his birthday present or something. Which was really quite kind of them to do, I guess, because brings back to the whole, like, they put their lives in the hands of these things. It's the same with both sides. Enemy weapons, enemies put their hands in the lives of their machines, same way we did ours, which is it kind of brings to the point of the futility of war. People don't want to fight, but it still happens anyway. All religions preach for peace, but all religions go to war. It's one of those things. I mean, playing games where you're shooting down people in planes doesn't necessarily help that sort of thing, because you're still doing that, pretty much. I don't know what the hell's killing me. I am very nearly dead, though. And I am probably going to be dead if Philip here manages to shoot me. And, oh, no, he collided with me. I think I actually killed him. Yeah, I might have killed him. Oh, wait, no, I didn't. God damn it. That LE5's nose is purple. Why is it purple? Oh, it's a check, fella. Interesting. There's something else to talk about. I've been waffling for far too long. Kind of what I do in my videos anyway, I just waffle. Okay. I can now get back in. I like this Spitfire. It's a fairly well balanced premium aircraft. It was a limited edition plane as well.
You've done what you could. Go back to base.
You could only get it for a certain amount of time, and speaking of time, I think it is time to end this video. I don't want to get any too lengthy. I don't actually know how long I've been playing for. We will see, because there is a clock in the game which is synced to your computer, which is actually quite handy. I don't have to tab out every time I want to look at the clock. Oh, I think I've probably been recording for like an hour. Well, so much of this being a short video. Oh well. I guess I'll see you in the next one.